Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast IDP edition. I'm your host, Jon Macri, and today is part 4 of our special Dynasty Rankings edition of the podcast, the final entry in this rankings quartet, where we wrap up things with a greatly important IDP position here, especially when they're split out in their own in the league settings. It's the defensive tackles. So we've now gone over the top 20 linebackers, top 20 edges, top 20 defensive backs. So you can go back and listen to those as well if you want. They're in the feed, in the YouTube, however you want to find them, if you haven't already. But yeah, on top of the rankings themselves, I've loaded those episodes up with detailed data and information about the positions themselves and how they relate to IDP, which is going to be probably even more valuable than the actual rankings. But I'm going to continue that today with these interior defensive linemen, as well as the rankings, of course. So let's get it. All right, let's talk some IDP defensive tackles, which comes with a bit of a loss this season as Aaron Donald officially retired as the GOAT defensive player, in my opinion. But he leaves the position better off than how he found it, inspiring the NFL and its players to find or be the next Aaron Donald and giving us a lot more pass rushing upside from these defensive tackles that we didn't quite get in the past, as the NFL, becomes more open to taking shots and giving opportunities to these undersized three techs that don't have to be amazing run stuffers and offer that ability to get after the quarterback. So now with that, the position is arguably as deep as it's ever been for IDP. However, I say deep, but I'm only talking deep relative to past defensive tackle classes. Relative to all IDP positions, it's still the most shallow position there is. So again, just kind of talking about the position itself and some hopefully helpful information here. If we just look at the top scorers at the position by fantasy finish. So this is last year, a year that gave us really a lot of strong finishes for the defensive tackle position, by the way. Like, not only for the people on the YouTube, you could probably see it there, but not only are the top 5 scorers averaging the second fewest points either per game or on the year, ahead of only the cornerbacks, but when you see that drop off is pretty steep as well once you get outside of the top 24 at the position, right? So for those that aren't watching on YouTube, I'll try to explain it here, but basically they maintain, the defensive tackles do a relatively similar pace to the rest of the position in total points, the rest of the positions in total points and points per game to the other positions when looking at, their top scorers and points per game through the top 5, that they're averaging 14.4 points per game. The defensive tackles are among those top 5, which is the second fewest. But once you get outside of those top 5 performers in points per game, they become the lowest scoring position in that 6 to 12 range, 13 to 24, 25 to 36, 37 to 60, and the rest of the top 100. They're even lower scores than the cornerbacks, right? So essentially all that to say, while there's still some high-end production at the top of the position, that production falls off pretty quickly, creating a positional scarcity, right? That makes it necessary to target the top guys early on, especially in like DT required leagues, right? Where you can't ignore them. And that's why these guys in this top 20 dynasty rankings episode are going to be so important as well, right? So the only other thing aside from that, just to highlight the positional scarcity that I want to talk about, is just what matters year to year, what is stable, and what best equates to fantasy production. So example, being sacks, similar to what we did with the edge rushers a few episodes ago. And that just like the edge rusher, revelation we had with the new metric I created, expected sacks, which is a combination of playing time and stable pass rush metrics, it becomes the most important metric to rely on when looking at the DTs as well, for both what equates to actual sacks in season and how stable that metric is year to year. So again, I have the chart pulled up here on YouTube, but what you can see is I have them sorted by the most stable metrics year to year, and pass rush grade does get the slightest advantage in year to year stickiness for the defensive tackle position, but it's also not nearly as strong of a correlation to actual sacks in season when compared to expected sacks, right? So that's really what gives expected sacks a big edge here. Now, sack rate, of course, is going to have the strongest correlation to actual sacks in season, but it's by far the worst predictive metric when it comes to the following season, right? Much like the edge position, which we talked about if you watched that episode. The biggest difference really between the DT correlators here and the edge ones is that expected sacks, pass rush win rate, pass rush grade, pressure rate, they're all better year-to-year correlations for DTs than they are for edges. And I think that just has to do with lower ceiling in those numbers, like for the position compared to what the edge guys are doing, where they're not necessarily generating sacks or insanely high win rates like the edges are, because they play on the inside, where they're seeing more double teams and directly in the vision of the quarterbacks as well. So it's harder to get those sacks or produce strong pass rush metrics. So with those numbers all typically being lower for the DTs, it's a tighter pool of numbers to project from, basically. And that's what leads to more stable year-to-year numbers, right? If that makes sense. So it's also why you'll see their fantasy points be among the most stable as well. When we talked about that, looking at the safeties and the cornerbacks last week, the safeties and corners had the worst year-to-year stability, where defensive tackles have the best when it comes to just overall fantasy production. All right, that is pretty much a lot of what I wanted to talk about for the position. Before we get into it here, just to give people a bit more insight into why players will generally be ranked where they are and what matters year to year. So with all of that out of the way, it's time to get into the rankings, starting at number 1, who I really don't think there's much of an argument for anyone else to be at the top here in Dynasty. It's Quinnen Williams of the New York Jets. So Quinnen is coming off a relatively down year in terms of sack production, right? Just 5.5 sacks in 2023 after 12.5 in 2022. It doesn't matter, right? If you've been paying attention at all to the early part of this episode or watch the Edge episode, like, we know that is not what we should be looking at when evaluating these guys. It's our expected sack totals and pass rush metrics that matter most. And for Quinnen, he set new career highs in all of those things this past year. He was top 4 for his position in every single one as well. Pass rush win rate, pressure rate, quick pressure rate, total pressures, all top 3 marks for him. His expected sack total ranked 4th at the position. Like, even though his actual sack total was 5.5, where he tied for 17th, like, again, the expected sack totals, the stable pass rush metrics are what we're banking on here year to year. So all of that combined is just a really nice set of numbers there to project for positive regression in his sack totals in 2024. And with that top 5 expected sack total being our most stable year-to-year metric, we can bank on him to push for that higher level of production year to year. So yeah, Quinnen, clear-cut DT1 for me as a player, still very much in his prime as well at 26 years old. He's established as one of the elites at the position. There's probably, I'd say, no bigger discrepancy across the IDP positions in Dynasty for me right now, from that number 1 spot to the next guys on the list, who, again, I still like the next guys on the list, but it's just not nearly as much as Mr. Bless You, Thank You, Quinnen Williams here. All right. Number 2 is Jalen Carter of the Philadelphia Eagles, who I think had a legitimate argument for Defensive Rookie of the Year last year, even over Will Anderson, who I also love. But considering what Carter did as a rookie at a harder position for production and pass rush metrics, he looked every bit the part of the college prospect and top 10 pick that we expected him to be. 85.9 pass rush grade, which was sixth at the position. 89 PFF grade was fifth. He tied with Quinnen Williams for second in quick pressure rate. That's 2.5 seconds or less to get a pressure. Sixth in pass rush win rate. He was top 10 in expected sacks. Again, like all that is a freaking rookie, like who the Eagles didn't even unleash like fully on a full workload. He played 407 pass rush snaps, which ranked 28th at the position. I think it's very fair to assume that number goes up in 2024, considering what he showed in year one, to immediately place himself among the very best at his position. So wasn't necessarily the fantasy producer that we needed him to be in year one if you were relying on him, but that's partly just because of the playing time. It limits his tackle floor, but that's going to come with more playing time and assuming that he continues that high level of play on the field. Just turned 23 years old as well. So this is really only the beginning for Carter. And I'm very comfortable having him here as DT2 in Dynasty. All right, number 3 for me, another elite pass rusher at the position and one that has established himself as such for many years now. It's Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, he's just been so good that Jones, like he's actually kept pace to what Aaron Donald was doing as one of the very best at the position year after year. He continued that dominance in 2023, posted a 90.3 pass rush grade that ranked third at the position, ranked first in quick pressure rate and overall pressure rate for the position as well as a top 5 pass rush win rate. Like his expected sack total of 8.5, that was second to only Aaron Donald. And he delivered on that as well. 11 sacks last year, just signed a nice new contract extension with the Chiefs this offseason as well. That keeps him locked in for a few more years as a starter. Like really the only thing with Jones to kind of be aware of as a negative is his lower tackle floor, right? He had the lowest tackles versus expected numbers for the position at a negative 30.5. It's just never part of his game. He's a hyper-focused pass rusher. He's not a strong tackler by any means, but he's also going to be 30 come week 1. So on the older side there where people may want to avoid him for Dynasty, but that big play upside, those elite metrics for so long, like not really showing any signs of slowing down, like that's the thing, as well as the contract extension that I think gives you confidence here in Chris Jones inside that top 5 range. Number 4 is Jeffrey Simmons of the Tennessee Titans. Really just one of the most consistent producers at the position, still very much in his prime as well at 26 years old. Always puts up good tackle numbers, good sack numbers relative to the position on an annual basis. He was DT4 in points per game last season. He's someone that just, for me, like he stays locked into your lineup as that DT1 option. Playing time, production floor, it's as good as it gets. Then you combine that with, solid pass rush metrics as well. Like not amazing numbers from him, like you'd find with maybe the top 3 guys, but that's kind of what it is with this position. It's hard to get both the tackle production and sack potential. So you'll see this. You'll see the start of this kind of stretch here of names. They become more of like a amalgamation of what I'm looking for here as far as tackle production, playing time, pass rush metrics, all those things kind of combined into one. It's going to be hard to find guys that are elite in those, but outside of the top 3 and a couple others. But I think Simmons is a really good representation of that. So I'm going to remain pretty high on him here for Dynasty. Christian Wilkins is number 5, the new Las Vegas Raider Christian Wilkins, who also just signed a massive $110 million contract, leaving Miami to join the Raiders squad. And the Raiders can definitely use a man of his talents, right? Like what's most interesting to me about Wilkins is he's now coming off 2 really productive seasons that he's managed to accomplish in 2 different ways. In 2022, we saw him post just insane tackle numbers, lead the position with over 100 tackles. And then in 2023, as expected, those tackle numbers regressed, but we saw a positive regression in his sack totals, right? Like dropping 9 sacks in 2023 after just 3.5 the year before. So Wilkins is another one of those guys like a Jeffrey Simmons for me, where because of his playing time, which isn't going to change that much in Vegas, and his solid pass rush metrics, he just finds ways to be a strong fantasy asset. And now teaming up with Max Crosby on the Raiders to be a workhorse along that defensive line, I really like his chances of continuing that production here for years to come. All right, number 6 for me is Justin Madubuike of the Baltimore Ravens, who, I mean, he's coming off an incredible breakout year where he posted 13 sacks in 2023, including an NFL record-tying 11 straight games with at least a half sack, which was undeniably amazing when it happened. It's so easy to, kind of get caught up in that feeling and potentially over-project him for 2024 and beyond. Like, I mean, I could almost guarantee that he'll be DT1 for a lot of people this season. And, I get it. I love him as well. But again, just coming back to what we're looking for as far as stability year to year, I think there has to be regression baked into this upcoming season. Even if he does improve his pass rush metrics, it's just so damn hard to repeat double-digit sacks at the position. I mentioned this in the first episode of the Dynasty rankings back in February, but if you look at the top sack leaders for the position every year, there just aren't many of them that are able to repeat in that double-digit sack range outside of guys like Aaron Donald and Chris Jones. And, even with Aaron Donald's elite pass rush metrics last year, he didn't get double-digit sacks, right? So, look, again, I love Madubuike. That's why he's DT6 for me, but I'm not projecting him to be the next Aaron Donald or Chris Jones. I think we need to temper those 2024 expectations for him just a bit. And that goes for Dynasty as well, right? Like, you look at his underlying pass rush metrics last year, they were good, but not elite. 18th in pass rush grade, tied for 15th in win rate, 24th in quick pressure rate. He did rank 5th in expected sacks. That's what helps him keep him here in this kind of range. But he's also another guy that is, young, up and coming, but he's not like Jalen Carter or anything either, right? So he's 26 years old, only a month younger than Quinnen Williams, which is kind of crazy. And again, Quinnen Williams to me, like, just on another level. So it's possible that Madubuike improves his pass rush metrics and moves up this list next offseason, even if his sack totals regress, which again, they almost certainly will. But I think just the important thing with him is just tempering expectations for 2024. All right, number 7, very similar to like the Jeffrey Simmons and Christian Wilkinses of the world. It's DeForest Buckner of the Indianapolis Colts. The biggest difference here, despite being arguably a better pass rusher than both of those guys, is that Buckner is now 30 years old, which is almost always going to push a guy down for Dynasty. However, for me, it's not too far because again, he's one of those consistent high-end producers at the position that it's just so difficult to find. He was 97th percentile in tackles versus expected last year, green across the board in his pass rush metrics as well. Expected sack totals consistently among the best at his position. He's top 10 there again last year. Didn't disappoint either. He had 8 sacks. So can't go wrong with him as your weekly DT1. So that's why he fits in there for me. Okay, now we start to get maybe a little spicy here by sprinkling in some of the young bucks. The top drafted rookie defensive tackle from this year, taken in the first round by the Seattle Seahawks. It's Byron Murphy, the second out of Texas. So Murphy, based on his college profile, draft capital, potential spot on this Seattle depth chart, projects as a high-end DT prospect to target in Dynasty right now for me, right? So coming out of college, elite 90.7 career pass rush grade, 15.3% win rate, both of those top 10 marks since 2021 in all of college football. There's also a path for him to play like significant snaps right away in Seattle and potentially hit the ground running, not too dissimilar from a Jalen Carter in Philadelphia last year. So, we mentioned Byron Murphy as top 10 in those key pass rush metrics coming out of college. Jalen Carter is the name that typically appears at the very top of those top 10. So not quite expecting that level of dominance as a rookie as far as the pass rush metrics go, but really like Byron Murphy's long-term outlook here, considering, again, that college profile, draft capital, and potential to see the field here in year 1 as well. Number 9 is Jonathan Allen of the Washington Commanders. Again, just coming back to those guys like Jeffrey Simmons, Christian Wilkins, DeForest Buckner, who are consistent producers year in and year out, whether it's as a tackler or in sack production. Jonathan Allen is right there with them as well. Tackles, sack numbers, right around where you'd expect them to be for a high-end defensive tackle like that. Expected sack numbers were tied exactly with Christian Wilkins last year for 11th at the position. The difference is Wilkins converted 9 of them, right? Allen converted 5.5. But again, nothing to hold against Allen or prop Wilkins up again because of, those finisher rates again, just they're going to vary quite a bit year to year. And instead, we want to look at the expected sack numbers. That tells us that he's on par with the Christian Wilkins, who I just had at DT5, right? So Allen's DT9, if nothing more than the fact that he's 29 years old instead of 26, right? But still, reliable snap volume to give us a strong tackle floor, positive pass rush metrics to bank on for upside. Again, 11th in expected sacks, top 10 in pass rush win rate, 19th in pass rush grade for the position. Still encouraging numbers there to bank on for Jonathan Allen. All right, number 10, Sexy Dexy, Dexter Lawrence. Many people might not be aware of Dexter Lawrence, that he's actually been he's led his position in pass rush grade in each of the past 2 seasons. Now, again, another guy that maybe didn't deliver this past year in terms of sacks, just 4.5 on the year after a strong 7.5 the year prior. But he's undoubtedly one of the best and maybe most underappreciated players at his position. In 2023, he finished first in pass rush grade, second in win rate, tied for 5th in quick pressure rate, 6th in overall pressure rate, 3rd in expected sacks, 3rd in run defense, and 1st in overall grade at the defensive interior, among defensive interior linemen, as a nose tackle, which is crazy, right? And that is probably the only reason that he's not higher than 10 for me, because of just playing that nose tackle position where he's so massive. He lives in the A gap where, his primary job is to be a run stuffer, which, essentially that's kind of what keeps his sack totals in check. But being that good at your job, being that dominant at your job, I should say, on the volume of snaps that he plays, it's just impossible to ignore at just 26 years old as well. So he is a top 10 DT for me in IDP right now. All right, Javon Hargrave is number 11 for me of the San Francisco 49ers. He also, kind of on the older side, like a Chris Jones and DeForest Buckner, but at the same time, still consistently producing high-end pass rush metrics for the position. I had him written up as one of the prime bounce back candidates last week because he had his lowest sack total in 3 years, which was still a nice number at 7. But at the same time, still producing elite pass rush metrics that we're used to from him, basically. So again, just the 7 sacks this past year, but again, another guy that ranked top 10 in expected sacks as well. Really, top 10 to 15 in every pass rush category that matters. He's going to continue to be, that go-to interior defender in San Francisco. So, Javon Hargrave consistently, I think, going to have a shot here, producing in that 7 to 11 sack range, as long as he's on the field. So, I like him quite a bit. And number 12 is Derek Brown. So, Derek Brown last year, I mean, he could have very well have been DT1 for you in your IDP leagues, depending on your scoring, because he was a tackling machine. He totaled an insane 108 total tackles this year, even surpassing Christian Wilkins' ridiculous 2022 total. It's not often that we get defensive tackles tackling high-end safeties, but when we do, we also expect a little bit of regression. Right? It's hard to repeat that kind of stuff. So I really like Derek Brown, but there's also a very good chance he's overvalued this offseason because of that 2023 season. I think he's still among the best dynasty players at his position, still in that DT1 range there for me, right? So, but expecting 100 plus tackles from him again is just, those are lofty expectations for the guy. I can't imagine that he'll get there again. Also, just the 2 sacks on the year as well. Even though that's never really been a big part of his game so far in the NFL, like he could definitely outproduce those numbers and continue to push for, top 12 in IDP, even without the tackle numbers, right? So he's a solid player, solid pass rush grade, 78.1, 17th at the position, tied for 20th at the position in expected sacks. So nothing crazy, but another 26-year-old who really has positioned himself among the best DTs in the league. He was a top 5 graded player overall for us last year, second highest in run defense last year as well. Got paid like it this offseason as well. So I think nice safe bet to make in Dynasty in this kind of range here for Derek Brown. All right, next up, a player that I love and one that finally delivered on that breakout season that I projected him for last year. I projected it the year before that as well, but he got hurt, so it didn't count. But this time I was right. Number 13 on the list here, it's Christian Barmore of the New England Patriots. So Barmore comes out of 2023 with 8.5 sacks and 56 tackles as the DT7 overall and DT8 in points per game. So using PFF scoring, but more importantly than that, like raw production, which we've been providing, less weight to all episode. He was one of the best players at his position. With aside from that raw production, right? He ranked top 10 in PFF grade, top 10 in pass rush grade. He was 11th in expected sacks. He gave us everything we needed him to show us last year that honestly, he's one of the better players at his position and probably a really strong argument to be in this top 12. And maybe I will move him up here. Right. I don't know. He's on the fringe either way. I might move him up a little bit, but also just got a really nice contract extension, which you love to see. 4 years, I think 92 million, something like that. He paid like an elite player, plays like an elite player, needs to be treated like an elite player, right? So I've already moved him up since the rankings article update from May, but I might actually move him up again, to be honest. We'll see. So anyways, Christian Barmore, low end DT1, high end DT2 for Dynasty, like his outlook. Number 14 on the list is Kalijah Kancey. So this is a guy who maybe has a good chance to vault himself into that top 12 for Dynasty as well. I don't think he's there yet. Kalijah Kancey of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who also owns like a pretty strong college production profile, has the first round draft capital to his name, but didn't quite hit the ground running like a Jalen Carter last season. And honestly, hard to expect that from any rookie. It's not like Kancey was bad or anything like that. He'll have lots more room to improve in year 2, right? Where if he does, then, he's definitely a contender for top 12 IDP Dynasty rankings, potentially top 10, but not quite yet. Like tied for 67th in win rate, 46th in pressure rate, tied for 28th in quick pressure rate, 75th in pass rush grade. So, this ranking of him, very much a projection because we haven't seen it yet from him in the NFL, but it's also only 1 year. He has the profile coming out of college where we should expect natural improvement in those numbers. He's 23 years old. He'll be given every opportunity to improve those numbers this season. Tied for 36th in expected sacks. So yeah, I like him a lot. DT 14 here. It's an upside projection based ranking. I don't think I'd be ranking him any higher than that right now, but he does have a shot at least to climb higher next year. Another guy in that same kind of vein as Kalijah Kancey in a way, but who is only a rookie, so really hasn't shown it in the NFL, but does have a similarly strong profile coming out of college. It's Jerzon Johnny Newton, now of the Washington Commanders. So Newton's opportunities this year, they're going to be few and far between because he's playing behind established veterans like a Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. So we really have to temper expectations for him as a rookie and not overreact to, lower playing time and production here in year 1. It's very much expected that this will be close to like a red shirt-ish type year for him. But he's also super young. He's not even 22 years old yet. He will be right before the season, but I think the Commanders investing a very early second round pick on Newton as well. Like, there's at least a chance they end up moving on from Jonathan Allen or Daron Payne. More likely Allen, because Payne just signed his extension last offseason. But there are outs with substantial savings in Allen's contract right now, though. I do think they prefer to keep him this year. If anything, shop him around for a trade, because he's still valuable enough that you don't want to lose him for free. But Newton, though, strong college profile as well. Not quite to the level of a Byron Murphy, but still good. 84.4 career pass rush grade, 12.2% win rate, 10.9% pressure rate. Those are strong numbers for a defensive tackle. He has the potential, right, to be a force in the NFL. But again, lower year one expectations have to kind of be baked in here for a young player who isn't a starter on the depth chart yet, but it shouldn't take too long for him to get there. Number 16 is Ed Oliver of the Buffalo Bills, who had a breakout season in 2024. 9.5 sacks, ranked inside the top 10 in expected sacks for his position as well. Posted decent pass rush metrics. It was a really nice year from Oliver, and one that I think is fair to kind of raise expectations of him from his career norm, where he's kind of been spotty at best, right? Like a little bit up and down as far as production and pass rush metrics go. So not expecting him to necessarily repeat at 9.5 sacks again, but his numbers were at least encouraging enough that, where he was top 10 in expected sacks was 6.5, which I think is probably a more reasonable number to expect from him year to year, in that 6.5 to 7 sack range. But also, a former first round pick as well. So going to be one of those guys who sticks around for a while. Just 26 years old. A nice bet here at DT 16, I think. Not quite that top 12 guy. Not sure if he'll push for that range, heading into year 6, but solid, reliable. I think a good pick outside the top 15. Okay, how about another breakout player from last year, and one who did it as a rookie? It's Kobe Turner of the Los Angeles Rams, coming in as DT 17. So Turner was excellent last season. 14th in expected sacks, 11th in pass rush grade, tied for 10th in PFF grade, and was top 20 in win rate and quick pressure rate. So the guy was like good, next to Aaron Donald as well. So we know how that tends to open things up a little bit for guys, which keeps him, or at least keeps me from raising him too high in these ranks for now. But I do think he's legit. Had a strong college profile coming out as well. He made my rookie sleeper list last year, but even I didn't expect him to be as good as he was. Like, can he repeat that? Probably not exactly this year. He was one of the biggest overachievers in terms of sacks versus expected. So you can expect that number to come down a bit, on top of the no Aaron Donald thing. But still, like, I like Turner quite a bit. I think there's a lot to like about him. 25 years old for a guy heading into year 2. So kind of puts him on the older side for a year 2 player. He's actually older than Christian Barmore, who just signed his second contract in the league, which is pretty insane. So that being said, still young in his NFL career. So like his chances of staying as a top IDP asset for the years to come. DT 18 is the third Washington Commander on this list. Those dudes are loading up there on the interior. It's Daron Payne, who is another one of those guys that is coming off a down year in comparison to 2022. But this was absolutely something we expected, and I had warned about last offseason in terms of expected regression. He's just not nearly as good of a pass rusher as his sack totals will tell you. YouTubers can see it on the screen there. Pretty much outside of the top 50 and everything that matters, right? The difference is that Washington deploys him in like a true workhorse role, where he's just out there all the time, and he soaks up production because of it, right? Like, even if he's not doing it efficiently, he plays so much that he still produces for IDP, right? He was DT 14 overall last year and DT 17 in points per game, despite like shit pass rush metrics, right? So, when we can bank on that kind of volume from just good players, because, he isn't great. Last year was bad, but he's still good. Like that's fine enough for IDP, I think, to kind of sneak in this top 20 here is that volume alone. If he ever gets back, to that double-digit sack total, it's probably not going to be because of elite pass rush metrics. It's more than likely just going to come from being on the field a ton, right? So that's something to value here in Daron Payne, on top of just, again, being a first-round pick, being highly paid. Like, he's going to keep getting those kinds of opportunities, which, again, just projects for him for high volume every single year, and that's why he's still in this top 20. All right, how about the oldest player in these ranks? DT19 for me is Cam Hayward of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dude is old as dust at 35 years old. No, I kid. He's younger than me, but still really productive for IDP. And as we kind of get into this little final stretch here of the top 20 and knowing about the production drop off at the position that we went over at the top of the show, you'll want to grab some more surefire production just to be safe. And that's really the only reason he's still among the top 20, Cam Hayward. Missed time with injury last season, so that slowed him down a bit. But just the year before, he was top 10 in IDP scoring at his position. 2 sacks last year. Again, missed time with injury, but still overproduced as a tackler, which he just always does. He has one of the best production floors at the position. I love the younger prospects as well. Like, if you want to go that route, you can. But again, like, you're taking potentially, outside of the guys that were mentioned in that top 18, maybe lower success rate chances here, especially at this position. So if you find yourself kind of in need of a defensive tackle and those other 18 guys that we just talked about ahead of Cam Hayward are off the board, like, Hayward can be kind of your comfort pick here, right, for 2024. And then once you have him in the lineup, you can take some swings on some younger players after that might work out beyond this year. But as far as safe bets for this season, Cam Hayward's a good one. All right, last one. And it's another one of those volume heavy, consistent producer types here at DT20. It's Zach Allen of the Denver Broncos. Nothing crazy in terms of pass rush metrics. Nothing poor either, though. So he's in that top 35-ish range for basically everything that matters. However, the nice thing about him is that he's an absolute workhorse as well, right? Which, again, we love for IDP. He's coming off a year where he played a ridiculous 913 defensive snaps, which allowed him to be like top 12 to top 15 IDP defensive tackle, depending on your scoring. But he also hasn't played fewer than 660 defensive snaps in any of his past 3 seasons. He played 504 years ago in his second NFL season. Like, he's a reliable, kind of steady Eddie type guy here is Zach Allen. Even if he's, never going to be that 10 sack player because of his pass rush metrics, it's not impossible for him to get to that range there just by default of being on the field as much as he is. Like, we just talked about it with Daron Payne, right? And Allen arguably has better, well, not arguably, he did have better pass rush metrics than Daron Payne last season. So, whether he's going to hit that 900 snap range again in 2024, probably not. But, knowing that his floor is probably closer to that 650-ish range, and he can still produce like top 12 to top 15 numbers on those snaps as well, which he did in 2022. Like, you got to love that for kind of what you're getting at this price, because he's not often going to be going much higher than this in dynasty drafts. But I think this is about the right range for him. So that's it. That's the top 20. Actually, just to quickly recap here. Number 1 was Quinnen Williams. It was number 1 with a bullet for me. I think there's a bigger gap there from 1 to 2. But after that, Jalen Carter of the Philadelphia Eagles was 2. Chris Jones of the Kansas City Chiefs was 3. Number 4 was Jeffrey Simmons of the Tennessee Titans. Christian Wilkins of the Raiders, now it was DT5. Justin Madubuike was DT6. DT7 was DeForest Buckner. DT8, rookie Byron Murphy II of the Seattle Seahawks. DT9, Jonathan Allen of the Washington Commanders. DT10, Dexter Lawrence of the New York Giants. Number 11 was Javon Hargrave of the San Francisco 49ers. Derek Brown, DT12 of the Carolina Panthers. DT13, Christian Barmore of the New England Patriots. Kalijah Cansey, DT14. Jerzon Johnny Newton, DT 15, also of the Washington Commanders, DT 16, Ed Oliver of the Buffalo Bills, DT 17, Kobe Turner of the Los Angeles Rams, DT 18, Deron Payne of the Washington Commanders, DT 19, Cam Hayward of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and DT 20, Zach Allen of the Denver Broncos. That's going to do it. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you are on YouTube, I do ask that if you please like and subscribe. Again, it really helps me a ton. It just lets, again, people know at PFF that IDP information is valuable. So let your voices be heard. Like, subscribe, share, comment, however you want to do it. I would greatly appreciate that. I do appreciate you all bearing with me in these solo IDP episodes over the past month as I try to knock out these dynasty ranking episodes. So it means a lot that you guys tune in, and luckily for you all, I won't be alone next week, as I will have my guy Dynasty Trip on to talk some 2024 IDP bounce back candidates. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Always a good time talking with Trip and getting his great insight as well. So hopefully people enjoy that. But again, I thank you all for listening to me going solo here for the past month. If you do enjoy IDP content like this, all I ask is you like, comment, subscribe, share in the YouTubes, however you want to do it. Because again, it does help me a ton. And it's the best way to know from you guys that this content is good for you. So I can keep it going, and I'm open to suggestions for improvement as well, all that kind of stuff. So always feel free to reach out. But until next time, peace out.